Welcome to SimpleSoftware 102, Simple Index Job Configuration Basics. In this class, we're going to go over the basic process of creating a scanning and indexing job for manual indexing using the Simple Index job options. So we'll start out by running Simple Index, and instead of opening one of the existing job configurations, we're going to hit Cancel this time and go File New and create a new job. Your basic processing steps involved in a simple index job are scanning or importing from a disk. That's step one. Step two is processing, which is barcode recognition, OCR, or image enhancement, auto rotation, things like that. Step three is your manual indexing and QC review of the images. And then step four is exporting the images. So we'll start with step one, import. So to import the images, we're either going to scan new images, which we define in here under input options by saying source is equal to the scanner. When we select scanner from this list, when you run the job by clicking the Run Job button up here, scanning will happen automatically. And that's different from many other scanning applications which require you to launch the scanning as a separate task from a separate menu item. In Simple Index, all of the processing steps happen automatically when you hit the Run Job button. In this example, we're going to import existing images from a folder, though. So we select Folder from the list, and now we see these additional options are ungrayed out. And we want to also select the Keep Originals option. And you want to select that anytime you're testing job options, which will allow you to run the same images over and over again and change the settings and see what happens. And so now we've told it to import images from a folder, we have to tell it what folder to import from. Your default input is defined in your global settings wizard, but we're going to use the input folder from the invoice processing job. And so we use the Set button to browse to that folder and set it there. Next thing we need to consider, or the next step in the four-step process, is the processing step, which is barcode and OCR. And since we're not going to be using any of those items, we'll skip to step three, which is determining your index field configuration. And in Simple Index, step 3 and 4 are intimately linked. So your output file name hierarchy is determined by your index field. So we're basically going to cover those two steps at the same time. So to determine your output, first you select your output folder. In this case, we're going to create a new folder called Sim102 for the class name, and we're going to output to that folder. Your index fields are defined on the Index tab, and this is also where your output file name hierarchy, folder hierarchy, and file naming scheme are defined. For this class, we're going to use the invoice processing sample pages, which are indexed under the account number, order number, and the business name. For manual indexing, we use the text field type, which just basically means the user can type whatever they want. And we create account number, order number, and business name text fields. So now we are set to index under these fields, but as you can see here, our output file name hasn't changed. To generate folders and file names using the index fields that we've defined, we use these folder and file name checkboxes over here. And basically the way it works is that from the top down, whatever index fields you have the folder name checked, it will create nested subfolders based on those field values. So if we check all three, we'll get subfolders for account number, and then under each account number there'll be the order number, and then under each one of those will be the business name. and it goes in order from top down. So you have to define your index fields in the same order that you want them to appear in subfolders and within the file name. And for the file name, it works by concatenating the values together. So if we check the same three things for the file name, we have the account number dash the order number dash the business name forming each unique image file name. And this folder and file name scheme is used to create multi-page files as well. Basically, any files that have the same output file name will be concatenated together by default and into a multi-page file. Instead of retyping each page, another thing you can do is check the forward option. And so if you have multi-page files, you can index the front page of each file, and then when you hit save index, the values will remain in the index fields, and you can just keep clicking save index until you get to the first page of the next file. That's what the forward option does. In this case, we know that each file has unique index values, and they're not multi-page files, so we want to uncheck that so that we don't get the user confused. So in this case, we want to create folders based on the account number and a file name based on the order number and business name. And we see down here in our preview that these options will lead to that result. One last output option to consider is if you want to change the output file type to PDF or Jpeg, you do so here. Jpeg supports single page files only, so you can't use multi-page files with Jpeg, but you can with PDF and TIFF. And this option here is what tells it to create multi-page files when the index values are the same. If you uncheck this option, you'll see on the index tab it adds -001 or the page number to the end of the file name, and it'll create single page files, and if you have multiple files with the same index values, it'll add 002, 003, etc. to the end of the file name. So now we have configured a job to manually index several images using the account number, order number, and business name manually entered by the user, and generate folders and file names based on those values. After you create your job configuration, it is absolutely important that you save it. Otherwise, you will lose all your configuration options when you exit SimpleIndex. So to save the job, you hit Save Configuration. And now we can run it and see what happens with the configuration options we set. Now, as we see, when we hit run, it went through the import step first, which happened very quickly because it's just copying some images from a folder. The processing step was skipped because we did not select any OCR barcode processing options, and we went straight into our manual indexing stage here. And so we can manually type the account number. I want to zoom in on the image a little bit more. And you notice the index fields are blue before you save them, and that just means that these values have not been saved. If we go back, we'll see that the values are now black, which means that they have been saved. I will spare both of us the process of going through all 12 of these images and indexing them manually. Suffice to say that it is much better in situations like this to use OCR or barcode recognition to index these files, which is why SimpleIndex has those features. So to abort a batch without finishing it, you go to File and then say End Job. And this will delete the image files from your batch folder. So that's the end of SimpleSoftware 102 Job Configuration Basics. We've seen how to create a very basic manual indexing configuration for SimpleIndex and how to set the input and output file naming options.